I was holding a screwdriver when she said it. Not metaphorically, literally. A screwdriver. I'd been tightening the loose door handle to our hallway closet. I had just gotten it snug when her voice, flat and final, drifted in from behind me. I never loved you. The screwdriver slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. There wasn't a build-up. No dramatic music. No warning. Just 5 words spoken with the same tone she might use to say we were out of milk. She didn't stutter. She didn't blink. I didn't even turn around. I just stood there staring at the closet door like it might open into a different reality where I hadn't just heard that. I guess you think you'll see it coming when someone finally pulls the last thread. But sometimes it just snaps. Quietly. Like a tired string on an old guitar. She walked past me like I wasn't even there. Stepped right over the screwdriver, actually. The same screwdriver I used to assemble our first coffee table when we moved into this house. The one she picked out. The one she said made us look like real adults. I couldn't move. My knees felt like they weren't connected to the rest of me. My brain kept repeating her words on a loop. Not like a song, but like an emergency broadcast. I never loved you. I never loved you. I never. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just went to the living room and started folding laundry. That was it. That was it. I sat down on the floor, right there in the hallway. I remember looking at the carpet and thinking I needed to vacuum. The most random, pathetic thought in the world. Meanwhile, my entire soul was buckling like the roof of a burning house. Let me paint the picture clearly. I'm not some perfect husband. I don't drive a Tesla or make 6 figures. I chew too loudly. I collect old baseball cards. I wear socks to bed. But I loved her. Deeply. Painfully. I thought we were one of those quiet couples who lasted. The type that makes it not because they're flashy but because they choose each other again and again. I chose her every day. And apparently she never chose me at all. It wasn't just the words that crushed me, it was everything they rewrote. Every memory. Every good moment. That time I stayed up all night building her birthday bookshelf. The snowstorm when we danced barefoot on the porch. Our ugly pajama movie nights. Did none of it mean anything to her? Was it all just acting? I finally stood up after who knows how long. My legs were trembling. I walked into the kitchen because I didn't know where else to go. I opened the fridge. Stared at a half-used bottle of ranch. Closed it. My head was buzzing like TV static. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood in the middle of the room trying to figure out what to do with that sentence. I never loved you. You don't get a manual for that. I asked her, eventually, maybe 10 minutes later, maybe an hour, I don't know. I asked, then why did you stay? She said, because it was easier. Easier. Not because she was confused. Not because she was scared. Not because she didn't want to hurt me. No. Easier. As if loving me would have been inconvenient. As if I were a couch she didn't like anymore but didn't feel like hauling to the curb. I packed a bag that night. Nothing dramatic. Just a few clothes, a toothbrush, my old hoodie. I left my charger, my cologne, my house key. I didn't leave a note. She didn't ask where I was going. And now here I am. Sitting in a gas station parking lot 2 towns over, typing this on a dying phone with fingers that still feel numb. I don't know what comes next. But I do know this, when someone finally tells you they never loved you, it doesn't set you free. It buries you under every lie you thought was a truth. And all you can do is dig your way out. I thought sleeping in the car would be a temporary thing. Just one night to breathe. Just enough time to gather myself. But that was 4 nights ago, and I'm still here. Parked behind an abandoned laundromat that smells like damp drywall and regret. My car battery died this morning. That feels weirdly symbolic. I haven't told anyone. Not my brother, not my coworkers, and definitely not my mom. She adored Whitney. Still sends her little thinking of you texts and asks when we're going to give her grandkids. The thought of explaining everything to her makes my stomach cramp. How do you tell someone that the woman you built your life around admitted she never felt anything real for you? That she stood in the same room where you once slow danced in socks and dropped a truth bomb that torched a decade? I've been scrolling through our old photos like a masochist. There's one of her laughing at a pumpkin patch. I remember we argued right before that because she forgot the tickets. But I told her it didn't matter. You're here, I'm here, that's all I care about. I thought I was being romantic. She probably thought I was just too spineless to hold her accountable. Last night I had this weird dream where I came home and everything was reversed. The pictures on the wall were upside down. Her voice was coming out of the TV. My clothes were in the fridge. And in the dream I wasn't even scared, I just stood there and said, oh. That makes sense now. I think my subconscious is mocking me. I kept hoping maybe she'd text. Not to ask me back. Just to say something. Like, sorry for how that went down, or you okay? But silence. Total radio silence. Like I was a faulty product she returned and forgot about. So today, because I couldn't take it anymore, I went back to the house. Not to see her. Just to grab a few things and maybe prove to myself that I still existed in that space. I parked a block away and walked like I was approaching a crime scene. The blinds were drawn. Her car was gone. I let myself in with the backup key we kept under the fake rock by the porch. I don't know what I expected, but what I found didn't feel like my home anymore. Everything was too still. The hallway smelled like citrus candles and lemon cleaner. She cleaned after I left. That stung in a way I didn't expect. My coffee mug was in the sink. Still stained. The blue one with the chipped handle that she hated. I took it. I don't know why. Maybe just to have proof that I was real there once. I went upstairs and opened the bedroom closet. Half of my clothes were already folded into plastic bags. Neatly. Precisely. Like I was a guest who overstayed his welcome and she finally tidied up the room. I took my hoodie, the one with the little tear in the sleeve from when we moved that busted IKEA couch in 2018. That couch is still in the living room. Same tear on the side. Funny how some things stay even when people don't. But here's the part that really gutted me. In the trash can next to her vanity was the sunflower napkin I drew on during our first date. I had doodled a tiny version of her with exaggerated hair and hearts and written, Whitney and Lowell, forever? She said she loved it. Said she kept it in her nightstand all these years. Well, it's in the trash now. Folded once, crumpled softly like she hesitated, but still threw it away. I didn't take it. I just stared at it. That dumb napkin symbolized everything I thought we were. And seeing it there, discarded like junk mail, made my chest ache so hard I had to sit down. That was the moment I knew she meant it. That she really never loved me. Not the way I hoped. Maybe not at all. I left without a word. Didn't slam the door. Didn't write a dramatic note. Just took my hoodie, my old sketchbook, and that chipped coffee mug. Left my toothbrush. Left my wedding ring on the counter next to the note I had written 2 years ago when she was sick and I made her tea. Rest, my love. I've got everything under control. I don't think I've ever been more wrong in my life. Now I'm back in the car, typing all this with cold fingers. The air smells like rust and gasoline. Some teenagers passed by earlier and laughed when they saw me. I must look like a wreck. I am a wreck. She's probably out tonight. Maybe with him. Maybe with someone new. Maybe alone. Doesn't matter. She's free now. And I'm just trying to remember what freedom even means when you're not wanted anymore. I keep asking myself, was I really that easy to erase? Maybe I was. The thing no one tells you about heartbreak is how quiet it is. Not at first, but after the shock fades, after the disbelief dries up, you're left with this unbearable stillness. And inside that silence, your mind turns into a projector, replaying every moment you thought mattered, every smile you thought was genuine, every kiss you convinced yourself meant something. It's torture with no blood, no bruises, and no one around to say, I see you hurting. After I left the house, I drove for hours. Just anywhere. At one point, I ended up in front of an old drive-in movie lot that had been shut down since the pandemic. The screen was still standing, cracked and sun-bleached, and I sat there staring at it like it might suddenly play a scene from my marriage. Like maybe if I watched long enough I'd see a clue I missed, a sign she never really cared. But nothing played. Just the wind scraping dust across my windshield. Eventually, I did what no broken man should ever do at night. I texted her. Not anything angry. I typed, did you mean it? And then stared at the screen for 20 minutes before pressing send. 3 dots popped up. My heart actually jumped. And then they vanished. No reply. Nothing. I sat there until my phone went dark and my fingers cramped from holding it too tightly. That was the moment I realized I wasn't texting my wife. I was texting a stranger who happened to wear her face. I ended up crashing on a friend's pull-out couch. His name's Bryce, we've known each other since middle school. He's the kind of guy who always smells faintly like motor oil and keeps beer in his fridge but no food. He didn't ask too many questions, thank God. Just nodded when I showed up with swollen eyes and said, bad night, and I nodded back. He handed me a blanket and said, you can talk when you're ready. Or never. That blanket felt more comforting than anything Whitney had said to me in the past 6 months. But this morning is where things took a strange, humiliating turn. I woke up to the sound of Bryce's doorbell. I was still in sweatpants and a hoodie that smelled like my car seat. Bryce answered it and I heard a woman's voice. Curious, I peeked down the hallway and froze. It was Whitney's sister, Melanie. She hadn't spoken to me in over a year. Not since the Christmas when she accused me of holding Whitney back. But here she was, standing in Bryce's doorway like a ghost in leggings and oversized sunglasses. I need to talk to him, she said, loud enough for me to hear. Bryce looked back at me, his face torn between hell no and this is above my pay grade. I nodded. I didn't know why, but I nodded. She walked in like she owned the place, sat on the edge of the couch, and took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. Not crying red. Guilty red. I didn't come to defend her, she said. But you deserve to know everything. I couldn't speak. I felt like I was waiting for a punch. Melanie took a breath and said, she's been seeing someone for almost a year. His name is Eli. Not Eliza. Not a coworker. He's a guy she met at a local book club. I blinked. Book club? She never cared about literature, I muttered. She joined because he let it, Melanie said. She told me it was a harmless escape. I told her to be honest with you. I begged her. I sat down. My body felt like a bag of concrete. She said she couldn't leave you, Melanie continued. That it would make her look like the bad guy. So she planned to push you until you left first. I don't know how long I sat there. My vision blurred. My ears rang. So this was the plan all along. Slowly break me down. Starve me of affection. Make me think I was the problem. Manipulate me into walking away so she could play victim with a clean conscience. She said she needed a story where she wasn't the villain, Melanie added. She wanted freedom without guilt. My voice cracked as I asked, so telling me she never loved me, that was her exit strategy? Melanie didn't reply. Just lowered her eyes and nodded. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, punch a wall, tear the floor apart. But instead, I just stood up, walked outside, and threw up in Bryce's flower bed. This wasn't just a failed marriage. It was orchestrated abandonment. She didn't fall out of love, she engineered her escape and used me as the excuse. And the worst part? I still miss her. I don't even know why I opened the envelope. I should have tossed it into the trash the second I saw her handwriting on the front. But something about seeing my name written in those familiar looping letters made my hands move on their own. My name. Just Lowell. No, husband, no, I'm sorry, no, please understand. Just my name, like she was writing to an old college roommate she hadn't thought about in years. It was tucked under the windshield wiper of my car, of all places. I'd gone out for a drive that morning to try to calm the roaring in my head, drove nowhere, really, just around the back roads near the outskirts of town. When I came back to Bryce's house, there it was. Plain white envelope. Slightly crinkled from the wind. She still knew what my car looked like. Still knew where Bryce lived. And apparently still wanted to have the last word. The letter was short. For paragraphs. It read more like a formality than anything heartfelt. I never intended to hurt you, it said in the second line. As if a scalpel to the chest is somehow less cruel when you use polite words. She claimed I was distant for a long time, and that she lost herself trying to make it work. Then she said something that made my stomach curl. I hope you can see this as a necessary step for both of us to grow separately. Grow separately? Is that what we're calling betrayal now? But the real gut punch came in the last line. She wrote, I'm moving in with Eli this weekend. I'd appreciate it if you could sign the divorce papers quickly so we can avoid unnecessary delays. No remorse. No regret. Just a logistical request, like we were finalizing a cell phone plan instead of dissolving a life. That's when it hit me. Not just that she didn't love me, but that she never wanted to love me. I was always just a placeholder. Convenience. Someone to hold the camera at weddings and pay the light bill while she figured out who she really wanted. And apparently his name was Eli. Eli. I kept saying it under my breath, like maybe repeating it enough times would dull the sharpness of it. Eli the book club guy. Eli the poetic fraud. Eli who probably uses words like soulful and authentic while sipping fair trade espresso from a reclaimed mason jar. I wanted to know who he was. Not because I wanted revenge. Let's be honest, I'm not the revenge type. But because I needed to know what she saw in him that she never saw in me. What was so deficient in me that she decided to unbuild everything we had like it was a badly assembled IKEA shelf. I did what I shouldn't have done. I searched his name online. It didn't take long. Turns out Eli had a blog. Of course he did. A painfully self-important mess of posts about narrative truths, authentic masculinity, and the vulnerability of modern men. The irony nearly choked me. He even had a post from 2 months ago titled, Learning to Let Go of the Woman Who Doesn't Belong to You. I read it twice. Then I read it again. And on the third time, I caught it. A line describing her. She smells like rosemary and late nights, and she never looks back when she laughs. That was Whitney. She wore rosemary oil behind her ears every day. I bought her that bottle. He was writing about my wife while she was still living with me, while I was still folding our laundry and asking her if she wanted garlic bread with her soup. I threw up again, this time into a trash bag that Bryce had left near the kitchen door. Bryce heard me, came in, didn't ask, just tossed me a towel and said, "She's not worth it, man." But she was. That's the worst part. She was worth it, to me. Even now, even with everything I've uncovered, even after that smug blog post, there's a part of me that's still looking for the version of her I believed in. The version I thought was real. But she's not coming back, because she never existed. She was just a role. And the show's over now. Later that night, I sat in Bryce's backyard, sipping a flat soda and staring at the stars. I hadn't done that in years. She hated bugs and hated being cold, so we never sat outside at night. I used to love it. And while I was out there, phone silent, heart bleeding, I finally said it out loud. Not to Bryce, not to the stars, just to the air. I never loved me either. Came out like a secret. Like I had just discovered the hidden reason why I let her treat me this way for so long. I didn't believe I deserved more. I accepted crumbs because I never asked for cake. I laughed off the dismissals, the distant stares, the emotional cold fronts because I thought, maybe this is just how it works. But it's not. At least it shouldn't be. And maybe that's where this really starts. Not when she told me she never loved me, but when I realized I'd never truly demanded to be loved. I wasn't planning to go to the house again. I told myself I was done. Done with that front porch, done with the memory-stained furniture, done with the air that still somehow smelled like her shampoo even when she wasn't home. But I needed my laptop, and my birth certificate, and okay, fine. I needed to see if she looked guilty. If there was even a flicker of discomfort in her eyes. I wanted something human to hold onto. Just a scrap of proof that I hadn't hallucinated the last 6.5 years. I pulled up to the driveway around 10:30 a.m. It was a Tuesday. I figured she'd be at work. But the second I turned the corner, my stomach dropped. His car was there, parked where mine used to be. A blue Subaru. Clean, modern, smug. Even the car looked like it judged me. I should have driven away. I should have spared myself whatever hell was waiting behind that door. But no. I parked across the street, turned off the engine, and just sat. For maybe 15 minutes. My fingers trembled on the steering wheel, my jaw was clenched so tight my molars ached. I was about to leave when the front door opened. Whitney stepped outside barefoot in one of those oversized t-shirts she used to sleep in when things were good. And right behind her, he followed. Eli, carrying a mug. Her mug. The yellow one with the little bee painted on it. The one I gave her on our 3rd anniversary because she said bees reminded her of summers at her grandmother's. She told me once that no one had ever listened to her the way I did when I gave her that gift. Apparently, Eli listens now too. She laughed. A light, breezy laugh. The kind I hadn't heard in almost 2 years. He said something and put his arm around her waist. She leaned into him. And then, God help me, she kissed him. Right there. On our porch. In front of the wind chimes I hung last summer. The ones she said were tacky but left up anyway. I watched as they swung lazily in the breeze, clinking like soft applause while she kissed another man 20 feet from where she once told me I was her safe place. My vision blurred, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I felt something else, something sharp and unfamiliar. Not anger. Not even hate. Just this hollow understanding that I was fully, truly, completely replaced. No mourning period. No reflection. Just swapped out like a light bulb. And then something happened that changed everything. As they went back inside, Eli turned to close the door and he looked at me. Not a glance. Not an accidental meet of the eyes. He saw me. Sitting in my car across the street like a ghost haunting his new castle. And instead of looking guilty or surprised, he gave me the smallest, most smug little nod. That nod nearly broke me. It said everything I was afraid was true. That he knew. That she told him everything. That I was the sad ex-husband still orbiting the life he now owned. That he'd already walked barefoot in my kitchen, sat on my side of the couch, maybe even slept on my pillow without washing the sheets. I peeled out. My tires screeched. I didn't care who heard. I just had to get away from that porch before I lost whatever was left of my spine. I drove aimlessly for an hour before I ended up in the parking lot behind an old bowling alley. I sat in silence, gripping the wheel like it was the last thing keeping me tethered to reality. I don't remember deciding to do it, but I picked up my phone and texted Whitney one sentence. Did you ever plan to tell me about him? A minute later, my phone buzzed. One word. No. That single word hit harder than everything else. No excuses. No explanations. Just a cold, unapologetic answer. Like I was a business transaction she didn't feel like finishing. No closure. No dignity. Just silence now, backed by the sound of two people living my life without me. I think that's when I broke. Not in a loud, dramatic way. I didn't scream or smash my phone. I just leaned forward and sobbed into the steering wheel like a child. My breath came in shallow gasps, my chest heaved, and I think I said please more times than I can count. I don't even know what I was begging for. Her? Clarity? God? Myself? Eventually, I pulled it together long enough to drive back to Bryce's. I looked like hell. He took one look at me and handed me a beer. Neither of us said anything. But then, out of nowhere, he walked to his closet, grabbed a duffel bag, and tossed it on the couch. You're not staying here anymore, he said. I blinked. What? Pack your stuff. You're going to Tennessee. He had booked me a week-long cabin stay in the Smokies. Said he'd already covered it. Told me I needed to disappear before I drowned in the pieces of my own history. At first I resisted. It felt like running. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that maybe running wasn't weakness, maybe it was survival. Because if I stayed any longer, I'd keep circling that house like a stray dog, waiting for scraps of something already rotting. So now I'm packing. Just the basics. Some clothes. My sketchbook. The mug she didn't throw away. And the napkin I retrieved from her trash while she was gone, folded into my journal like a scar I refused to hide. Tomorrow, I head to the mountains. And for the first time in weeks, I don't feel entirely hollow. Just mostly. I didn't expect the cabin to feel like anything. I figured it would be empty wood and cold air and maybe a few spiders in the corners. What I didn't expect was for the silence up there to sound like a mirror cracking very slowly, each minute peeling back something I had been avoiding for years. The place set just past a bend off the Blue Ridge Parkway. No Wi-Fi. Spotty cell service. A tiny kitchen that smelled faintly like burned bacon and pine. There was one creaky twin bed, a chipped rocking chair, and a window that looked out over a dense forest with no signs of civilization. It was perfect. Horribly, uncomfortably perfect. I unpacked in slow motion. Everything felt foreign, like I was borrowing someone else's life. I couldn't stop thinking about how quickly I had been erased. I imagined Whitney and Eli drinking wine on the porch, reading to each other from his stupid blog. I imagined her laughing at the same dumb jokes she used to say she loved from me. And maybe that's when I realized she was never laughing for me. She was laughing because it made her feel adored. I was just the mirror. The first night, I barely slept. Not because I was anxious, though I was, but because my mind kept replaying her face when she said it. I never loved you. Not because she said it with hatred, but because she said it like it was the weather. Like it was always going to be true and I was the fool for pretending otherwise. By the second day, something strange happened. I started talking to myself. Not in the I'm losing it way, but in the I've got no one else who'll listen way. I'd sit on the porch with my sketchbook and just talk, to the trees, to the fog, to the wind. I said everything I had never said out loud. All the things I had swallowed for years. I felt like I was auditioning for your affection. I hated that you never looked up when I walked into the room. I knew you didn't love me and I stayed anyway because I thought maybe I could earn it. I said these things and waited for an echo. But nothing echoed. Nature doesn't comfort. It just listens. On the third morning, I found a letter slipped under the cabin door. I froze. My chest locked. No one knew I was here except Bryce, and he wasn't exactly the handwritten note type. The envelope had no name. Inside was a single piece of paper folded twice. It read, "You left without asking the one question that mattered." No signature. No return address. I read it 6 times. Then again. Then I turned the envelope over, looking for clues like I was in a movie. I wasn't. I was a grown man in a borrowed flannel shirt holding a mystery note in the middle of the mountains like a character in a bad thriller. But something about it dug into my ribs and wouldn't let go. What question? What didn't I ask? I asked why. I asked how. I asked if she meant it. But I never asked who else knew. It hit me like a slap across the brain. My father. I hadn't thought of him once since this all fell apart. And maybe that's telling. Maybe deep down I knew he wasn't surprised. The last time he and Whitney were in a room together, he'd watched her like a man watching someone balance a knife. Calm but alert. He'd always been quiet about his opinions, military background, the say less type, but I remembered one thing he told me during our wedding rehearsal dinner. If someone ever shows you a crack in the wall, he said, don't paint over it. Tear the wall down. You never know what's behind it. At the time, I thought he was just being poetic in his grumpy retired sergeant way. Now I realized he was warning me. So I called him. The signal cut out twice before it finally went through. I braced myself. I expected silence. Maybe disappointment. Instead, he answered on the second ring and said, took you long enough. I sat there stunned. You knew. I didn't have proof, he said. But I saw her once. In town. A year ago. She was walking out of that bookstore near the square with a man who wasn't you. Hand on his back. Whispering. I watched for 5 minutes before she noticed me. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were happy, he said, then paused. Or at least, you thought you were. And I wasn't going to be the one to kill that. I felt something inside me snap. I deserve to know. No, son, he replied. You deserve better. But knowing wouldn't have made you leave. You would have just tried harder. He was right. And that's what broke me again. I wasn't in denial. I was addicted to trying harder. I treated love like a reward you earn with enough patience, enough apologizing, enough tolerance. But love doesn't live in quiet suffering. It doesn't grow where there's fear of not being enough. It was the last thing he said before hanging up that has stayed with me since. She never deserved your silence. I sat there with that line ringing in my ears, staring at the trees like they owed me answers. But the trees didn't answer. So I wrote. For the first time in years, I filled pages of my sketchbook. Not with art. With words. Not for her. For me. I wrote every little thing I had wanted to scream. Every sentence I swallowed to keep peace. Every apology I made when I had done nothing wrong. I didn't eat that day. I didn't sleep much either. But I felt something cracking open, something deeper than anger or grief. I think it was my voice, crawling out from wherever I buried it. I'm still in the cabin. There are 2 days left in this trip. But something tells me the real journey is only just beginning. The next morning began like the others, cold air through a cracked window, the smell of damp pinewood, and the slow realization that I was still alone. I had barely touched the food Bryce packed for me. A few granola bars, a half-eaten loaf of bread, a single can of chili I kept avoiding because heating it up meant pretending I still cared about things like warmth. But something shifted that morning. I heard a knock on the cabin door. A knock. Out here. In the middle of nowhere. My breath froze in my throat. I didn't move for the first 10 seconds. I just stood in the center of the room, staring at the door like it might open by itself. Another knock, firmer this time. I crept forward and pulled the curtain aside just an inch. It was Melanie, Whitney's sister. Her hair was tied up. Her hoodie looked 3 sizes too big. And she held a thermos like she'd been gripping it for miles. When I opened the door, she didn't say anything. She just handed me the thermos and pushed past me like we'd been roommates for years. I stood there stunned until she finally spoke. I thought you might be stupid enough to run away and not tell anyone. So I tracked you down using Bryce's Instagram story. My brain was a mess of questions. But before I could ask the obvious, why are you here? She dropped the bomb. She's pregnant. My knees buckled. Literally. I had to sit down. I whispered, it's not mine. Melanie nodded. I know. I stared at her, waiting for her to blink, to laugh, to take it back. But she didn't. She sat across from me, her jaw clenched. She found out last week, she said. Didn't plan it. Didn't want it. But she's keeping it. Said it feels like a clean start. I wanted to vomit. So Eli gets everything? I asked. My house. My life. My wife. And now my baby kid too. Melanie looked away. It's worse. My hands trembled as I clenched the thermos. How? She told Eli it's your baby. She said she wanted to keep things clean, avoid suspicion. My heart stopped. What? She's going to put your name on the birth certificate. The room started spinning. My ears rang. It felt like I had just stepped into an alternate reality where cruelty was logic and manipulation was love. She's what? She wants to keep the house. Legally. Financially. And she knows if you're on the birth certificate, she can drag this out and bleed you through divorce court. My mouth was dry. My throat closed in on itself. So, she's using the lie of my fatherhood as leverage? Melanie nodded slowly. I warned her not to do it. I told her it was monstrous. But she's already met with a lawyer. I stood up. No. I'm not going to let her do this. I'm done being quiet. That's when Melanie looked at me with something like sympathy and maybe guilt. There's more, she whispered. She's already started telling people you abandoned her. That you left her while she was pregnant. That you were emotionally distant, cold, selfish. My jaw clenched. And what does Eli think? She hasn't told him the truth either. He thinks it's his. but she's delaying the paternity test until after the birth. Said she wants control of the narrative. Those were her words. That was it. The moment the last ember of anything I still felt for her, love, grief, nostalgia, died in me. Because this wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. I have nothing left, I said. Not a house. Not money. Not her. And now she's trying to saddle me with a child that isn't mine to lock me into her story. Melanie lowered her voice. That's why I'm here? To warn you. And to give you this. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a USB drive. She set it on the table like a loaded weapon. I started recording our calls 3 weeks ago, she said. I knew something was off. I didn't plan to use them. But I kept everything. You need to hear what she said about you about all of this. It'll help you in court. And more importantly, it'll set you free. I didn't touch it right away. I just stared at it like it was radioactive. Melanie stood up to leave. Don't wait too long. She's already writing the ending. You need to start telling your side. After she left, I sat in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just listened to the wind through the trees and thought about how close I'd come to staying silent forever. About how close I'd come to letting her control the story while I disappeared. I plugged in the USB drive. The first file opened with her voice, Whitney's voice, sharp and cold and unmistakably calculating. I mean, Lowell? He'll believe anything. I could tell him the sky's green and he'd ask what shade. Honestly, I wish he'd just disappear already. Once the papers are signed, it's like I get a redo on life. I paused the file. My heart pounded in my throat. And for the first time in this entire hellstorm, I felt something other than shame. I felt rage. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in that cabin with the USB drive still plugged in, playing every single recording over and over. Each file was worse than the last. She wasn't just rewriting history, she was rewriting me. Turning me into a caricature. A ghost. A man too soft, too clingy, too forgettable to matter. But the more I listened, the more something inside me shifted. I wasn't sobbing anymore. I wasn't begging the sky for answers. I wasn't clutching at memories like lifeboats. For the first time in weeks, I was planning. I was thinking clearly. Not about revenge. Not about destruction. But about liberation. I wanted my name back. When I returned to town, I didn't go to the house. I went straight to a lawyer. A real one. Not the budget guy I'd used for taxes, but someone who knew how to handle fraud, custody threats, and character defamation. I handed him the USB drive and every message I still had from her. I told him everything. He didn't blink. Just nodded and said, "You're not the first man to be buried alive by a lie. But you'll be one of the few who dug himself out." We filed for divorce with conditions. I fought back hard. And because of Melanie's recordings, I didn't just defend myself, I won. The court blocked Whitney from putting my name on anything. Her lies fell apart under scrutiny, and Eli? He left her the week the paternity test came back. Turns out he didn't take too kindly to being a prop either. I never saw her again after the hearing. No final confrontation. No dramatic ending. Just silence, the same kind she used on me, but this time it was mine to give. I moved out of Bryce's place and got a small apartment near the river. It's nothing special, squeaky floors, a fridge that hums too loud, neighbors who argue about laundry, but it's mine. For the first time in years, I breathe without waiting for the air to turn cold. I started sketching again, really sketching. I filled 3 full journals in a month. One of them I titled Things I Was Afraid to Say. Another I titled What It Meant to Love You. The last one? What It Means to Love Myself. That one was the hardest. And then something I never expected happened. I met someone. Not in a rom-com way. Not in a bumped into her and spilled coffee way. No, it was at a local art group I joined to get out of the house. Her name's Jessa. She doesn't try to fix me. Doesn't ask me to laugh if I'm not in the mood. She listens. She sees me. She doesn't reach for my hand unless I reach back. The other day we sat in silence for nearly an hour just sketching the same tree. And when I looked up, she smiled, not the kind of smile that tries to charm or disarm, but the kind that says, "You're safe here." I don't know where it's going. And that's okay. I'm not rushing toward anything. I'm learning to live in the moment. To rebuild. To choose peace instead of chasing approval. Because here's the truth. I was never too soft. I was never too weak. I was never not enough. I just gave the best parts of myself to someone who saw me as background noise. But I'm not a whisper. I'm not a placeholder. I'm me. And finally, I've stopped asking for permission to exist.